Hello, tea family. How are you this evening? Hope you're having a wonderful week. If you're checking in, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, or better yet, just tell me what kind of tea you're drinking. And yeah, what kind of tea? Say hello. That was what it was. It's been a very long day, everybody. Just I need a little grace tonight. As you can see, I'm coming to you live from a hotel room today. That's because when the live stream happens, and I am not home yet, but very, very soon. Just a few more hours, and I get to come home. Today, we're actually going to be diving into something fun. I wanted something really fun for today, especially. It's actually one of my favorite live stream topics to talk about because it combines two things that I think, make life a little sweeter: loose leaf tea and chocolate. So, why do some tea and chocolate pairings taste absolutely incredible, while others they just kind of fall flat? Well, we're going to address some of that today. What if I told you that maybe you're just pairing the teas and chocolate incorrectly? Now, if you think tea is just for when you're sick or chocolate is just a guilty pleasure, stick around. We're about to unlock some wellness secrets along the way. So we're not just talking about flavor today. We're going to be talking about maybe what might be considered a brain hack. I don't know. We'll see. So whether you're a tea enthusiast, a chocolate lover, or someone who just enjoys discovering delicious things, you're in the right place. Grab your beverage, say hello in the chat or comments. Let us know what you're enjoying tonight as a beverage, and we're going to get started. All right, and I will say that my handy dandy assistant is coming from halfway across the country from where I am, so he's going to try and help me keep an eye on the comments, but I will keep looking over and looking down so I can try and watch the comments myself so that I don't miss anything. All right, here we go. So I want to start with just by saying chocolate is way more complicated than most people realize. Most people think chocolate is just a wonderful sweet treat, but chocolate is actually one of the most complex foods that we can possibly eat. Welcome, Stephanie. She's doing fruit infusers with water today. That's a great choice. So what makes chocolate such a complex compound or flavor? It changes depending on where the cacao beans are grown. Chocolate contains flavor notes like cherry, raspberry, citrus, honey, caramel, nuts, coffee, spices, floral notes. I mean, that's a lot of different complexities that could possibly be influencing the chocolate. Now, does any of that sound familiar? Because tea works the exact same way. Tea isn't just tea. Chocolate isn't just chocolate. Both are going to have layers of flavor that are waiting to be discovered. And what's even better is when we can pair them together. Because one of the reasons why tea and chocolate really do pair so beautifully together is because they both kind of speak the same flavor language, so to speak. Once you start noticing those flavor layerings, it's hard to not notice it in the future. It's one of those things once you do it, you can't go back. So when you pair a quality organic loose leaf tea with a high quality chocolate, you're really combining two powerful plant molecules: L-theanine from the tea and the theobromine from the cacao. Now, theobromine is going to give you a smooth cardiovascular kind of energy lift without the coffee jitters, which is why so many people like caffeine as a little pick-me-up. While the L-theanine in the tea kind of helps calm the nervous system and sharpen focus, together, ultimate clean energy brain boost. So if you're in that part of the day, whatever it is for you, for me, it's late afternoon, early evening, when I start to get really, really tired because I get up super early. That is when I should sit down and have a cup of tea along with a piece of chocolate, nice quality chocolate. But today we're going to talk about a few different types of chocolate, and we're going to add in a wild card thing here and there. We're going to use we're going to talk about some traditional tea and chocolate pairings. Now, these are good standard pairings. They are going to always bring you a good result, but they're pretty traditional, and you may have heard some of them before. I want to bring you something unique that you may not have considered before, but that will absolutely bring out some of the best flavors in both the tea and the chocolate. And then what I think is the overall kind of best pairing for each type of chocolate. So it's easier to stick with the chocolate because we have just basic kinds, whereas there's so many varieties of tea. So who's ready? I think everybody's probably ready. All right. So let's start by talking about kind of the three general rules that are typically accepted as pairing when you're talking about pairing tea and chocolate together. First of all, you don't need a culinary degree. Just kind of follow these three simple rules and you will do well. First, you want to match your intensity between the tea and the chocolate. A delicate white tea can be easily overwhelmed by a powerful high cacao dark chocolate. It's too much of a contrasting flavors. So one of them, in this case, most likely the delicate tea, is going to get completely lost. A strong Irish breakfast blend can overpower a very light milk chocolate. So something that has a lot of white chocolate with just a little bit of milk chocolate in it. Think of it like a conversation. You don't want to drown out. You're trying to kind of both talk around the same volume level. Now you could get excited and you could speak a little louder for a second, and then you could also be more contemplative and kind of like soften your voice for a second. That's the kind of thing that we're talking about here. The same kind of speed. You're kind of matching your speed. There's going to be highs and lows to kind of contrast a little bit, kind of the everyday speech from when you're really excited or something's really important. And there are times that you're going to have one that's going to be a little bit softer. It's the same type of situation when we're matching our tea and our chocolate. So you don't want either one to be completely drawn out. So there's number one. Rule number two, find complementary flavors. Chocolate that has berry notes is going to really, really complement a fruit-based tea. Chocolate with nutty notes is going to pair with some like roasted or more malty teas. Those kinds of things, you're going to have some kind of similar flavorings together. That's going to automatically be a great way to be complementary. Okay, rule number three, use contrast. Remember when I was just talking about, your voice goes up and down or your speed goes up and down depending on the conversation. But there is some variation in there. You want sometimes that kind of opposite, that contrast to create really some magic. A bright citrus tea can make chocolate taste richer. A bold tea can make sweet chocolate seem less sugary. And that's where the fun really, really begins. So those are going to be some of the rules that I'm going to talk about when you're doing your own pairings, which I encourage you to do. Okay, so let's talk about dark chocolate. So one of the reasons why I want to start with dark chocolate is because it is so much fun and a lot more people are starting to enjoy dark chocolate. My handy dandy assistant and I have been enjoying dark chocolate for years and years and years. Maybe I don't want to think about how many years, but it's always been a darker, more depth of flavor. It's bolder. Sometimes it can be bitter, but it's deeply complex flavoring. I just really like it because it's also not overly sweet, typically your dark chocolates. So what the traditional approach would be, see, Stephanie agrees, dark chocolate is the very best chocolate. I agree. A very high cacao dark chocolate is awesome. So traditionally, these would be paired with like an Earl's blend, a bright citrusy bergamot, but black tea. The bergamot's going to kind of cut through the heavy cacao fat and lift some of that bitterness away, but it is strong enough. A very best chocolate. Woo, handy dandy assistant. Shaking my head at you. Okay. The thing about the traditional blend with the Earl's blend is that it's also that citrus is light enough to really not be overpowered by the heavy cacao, the heavy dark chocolate. Now, something that is unique but becoming a little more popular is the peppermint herbal. Um, a highly a powerful mint tea can create a kind of a gourmet thin mint sort of feel in the mouth that can be very, very refreshing. But what you'll have to watch for is you want a loose leaf tea that is mostly peppermint leaves. They might have like our green mint would work here because it's a good blend of having enough peppermint but not being over the top. But you really are going to have a dark chocolate that's not quite as high in cacao, maybe like a 60 or a 65% cacao, so that it's not quite as bitter, so that you still get that hint of sweetness to it for that thin mint feel. Okay. Now, what I would also want you to consider with a dark chocolate is some of our breakfast blends, whether it be breakfast, whether it be Irish, whether it even be our Scottish breakfast blend. You can even go into something with a little bit of the cinnamon to it, morning Irish or serene sunrise. Those would really work well because they have a decent amount of Assam tea in them, and that dark chocolate is going to need that bold malty black tea so that it can stand toe to toe with the dark cacao without getting drowned out again. Now, dark chocolate and black tea are actually both packed with flavonoids. Pairing them pairing them creates an antioxidant powerhouse for those that want to think about things like heart health and things like that. So, again, just wonderful partners. Scottish breakfast, Irish breakfast, even a peeling would work, although it has a little bit of a fruit note for sweetness because it's going to have kind of that kimam in there. But also you could go with a chai blend, but I'm going to save the chai. I'm gonna suggest that one. It would work here. You could put a nice, beautiful onyx chai. I know that's Stephanie's favorite in here as well, because basically these teas are going to have enough body and character to stand up to the dark chocolate rather than disappear behind it. So one of my favorite tricks to see if I'm really loving back and forth is to take a sip of the tea, take a tiny bite of the chocolate, and then take another sip of the tea, and then you really get to notice exactly how the flavors change. But start with the tea, then the chocolate. Excuse me, everybody. Oh, long day. And then another sip of the tea, because the first one is you're going to get the flavor of the tea. You're going to enjoy that. Then you're going to have the chocolate. And then when you have the tea again, it's just going to you're going to get a good mix because you've layered that flavor in there. So new way to enjoy it. All right. So next, I'm going to go with the chocolate that so many people talk about all the time, and what most people consume as chocolate, which is a milk chocolate. This is where many people get surprised by what some of the teas are. So because it's sweeter and creamier, it pairs well. Kind of the traditional is going to be that breakfast blends. A lighter black tea, Scottish breakfast would work. A gentle oolong. Any kind of honey forward or honey bush tea, if you were sticking to the caffeine freeze, would also work. The milk chocolate can soften the stronger teas and bring out some hidden notes that you might not notice otherwise. But again, it's having that conversation. You can't go too strong in the tea because you've got a gentler milk chocolate, and that's why we want to do. So the traditional is typically like that English breakfast or an oolong. I really like the oolongs for this. That you're going to kind of get that classic tea and milk combo, but the milk is in the chocolate this time. The astringency of the black tea really is going to kind of cleanse some of that sweet coating on your palate. It's a good combo. Now, if you wanted to work out of that and try something unique, try a tea that has some smoky or toasted notes to it. So here is where you're going to you could go with something that's very much a like a heavy sencha green tea or a Japanese green tea, that would work because it's going to have some of that savory, nutty, popcorn like notes. And especially if you've got uh, a toasted tea, this is going to transform that milk chocolate into a much more complex gourmet treat. Now, the best one, though, the best one I would pair, which is going to sound a little bit surprising, with a milk chocolate is actually going to be a ruby chai blend. Now, that's our caffeine-free chai, but the the chai is going to have some of the warming spices, the cardamom. It's going to have the cinnamon. It's going to have the nutmeg. It's going to turn that milk chocolate into like this decadent spiced dessert experience. And so that is one of the reasons why I would particularly go with the chai for the milk chocolate, because it's going to bring enough contrast to it without going over the top. Yep, I'm drinking water today. It's kind of crazy, but I don't have a way to make tea right now. All my travel teapots are in Kansas, where I will soon be myself. So, all right, that brings us to one of the most challenging teas to pair, or chocolates to pair tea with, or chocolates to pair, even generally speaking. The hardest chocolate to really pair isn't dark chocolate, what most people think it is. It's white chocolate, which there are those that argue isn't even a chocolate. And that's because it's so sweet. It's so extremely sweet that its other teas just literally simply disappear. Now, if you change your goal to not compete with the sweetness and you think of it more in terms of getting that balance correct, then this is one of those pairing challenges that can be really fun to experiment with at home. Now, where I'm going to start you is more traditional. Some of the ways I would traditionally do it would be an emerald garden, because you're going to have that sencha green tea. This would also be a green mint, would be a really good one with this, because you're going to have a little bit of the mint to balance the sharpness of the mint to balance the sweetness. But that's where that bitterness of you want a little bit more on the bitter side of the green tea as opposed to the perfectly balanced. But there's going to be enough herby notes in it to work. Now, a unique way of going would actually be, are you ready? Would be, you could do a ruby chai, but I would actually move you over in your thinking to do Earth Fire, which is a rooibos has walnuts. Why do I want to say it's walnuts? It's not cashews. It's help me out, handy dandy assistant. Hearthfire is one of our very, very special teas, and it was just created last year. So I haven't been dealing. And I only made a very, very limited because it was It was for that pecans. It's pecans. Yes, thank you. The pecans and the rooibos would be in the Hearthfire would be perfect for that. But another one, which you may not have thought of, which is perfect because it is June, is Maiden's Blush, that rooibos, but the rose petals in that are going to add honey notes, but they're actually going to kind of counterbalance the sweetness, but you've got rooibos in there. So it's going to kind of balance both of the sweetness out there. So that would be another one. But my best suggestion is going to surprise you because it's going to kind of throw out everything that I just talked about a little bit. If you really want to do something unusual with a white chocolate pairing and with tea, I would invite you to think about Ancient Green Dragon, because you're going to have the green tea. Although it's a jasmine green tea, it's adding a very subtle sweetness to it. But what you also have in there is that vanilla bean, and that vanilla bean, vanilla and chocolate, vanilla, it brings out the flavor of the chocolate even more. So it won't get overpowered, and it's going to kind of just give a velvety smoothness to it. So there you go. Ancient Green Dragon is in there. I have have to say, when I was putting this together, I did think about Nautical Twilight, where you get the ginger hibiscus, as an interesting one for that. But I have to try it because I don't know if I'm going to like it or if it's going to be too much of a contrast. Or you've got like two people shouting at each other. The chocolate and the tea are shouting at each other. So I thought I want to try that at home. But that's why, go ahead, experiment. That's what it's for. Okay, so when people one of the reasons why we're doing this is because I know people think of like wine and chocolate pairings, but tea has such depth that people miss, that it actually even brings more to the table, I think, than the wine does, because wine pairings can be wonderful, but the tea just has so many complex flavors, and it has a lot of the same flavors as we talked about in the chocolates, that you get to really play with those layers a little more. But I did want to talk about that a little bit, because I know so many times people talk about like, well, it's always wine and chocolate, but it's not. Tea and chocolate can be an amazing combination. So let's talk about another kind of chocolate. There are lots of flavors of chocolate, but how about a spicy chili chocolate? So a lot of times there can be flavors in chocolate, a raspberry chocolate, a blueberry chocolate, where it's been infused with fruit flavors or other notes to it. And one of the most popular ones nowadays is chili chocolate, a spicy chili chocolate. So it's going to be warm, kind of intense, going to have some of that complex heat, but enough sweetness in it to kind of balance off the heat so your mouth doesn't burn off completely. I know a lot of people love those kind of chocolates. So what kind of teas would I pair? Well, traditionally, I would be talking about a serene sunrise, or I would be talking a maiden's blush. I'm doubling down on the warmth, going to kind of create that Mexican hot chocolate flavor profile, that sort of thing. Something unique would be that Nautical Twilight, or the Christmas oolong that we do, because that tart cranberry like acidity of the hibiscus is going to kind of shock the palate and then cools the chili heat really beautifully. But I would have to say that my favorite tea blend that I would put against this would be appealing. You're going to have a Kimon apple cinnamon tea. So you're going to have that black tea is a natural, sweet, subtly unsweetened cocoa, fruit aroma with the apples and the cinnamon to kind of bridge that gap against the spiciness of the chili chocolate. That is going to be the absolute best tea ever. And it's really going to be something unique, because most people wouldn't think to put an apple black tea against a spicy chili chocolate. Most people think so many other flavors and fruits when you talk about things like that. So just those are my thoughts so far. No, we're not doing chocolate covered bacon. No bacon. In fact, that real bacon needs to be gone before I get home. Excuse me. So what I would say is, take some of these examples, try them, but really create your own chocolate tasting at home. You don't need fancy equipment. You don't need expensive chocolate. You don't need to be an expert. Pick 3 chocolates. Pick 3 teas. Taste, compare. Do the trick I taught you earlier. Take a little sip of the tea, a little bite of the chocolate, a little sip of the tea. Have some plain unsalted crackers, or like just some very simple bread to kind of cleanse the palate in between tastings, so that you kind of get all the flavors. But like, sit down, have fun with it. Write down what surprised you. Invite some friends and make it a date night. That kind of thing. You'd be really amazed at how people can take the same foods and try them at the same time and experience different flavorings. I get teased a lot because Rich is convinced that women can see more colors and we can taste more flavors, because we're like, oh, it has this in it or has that in it. And I think he's spoiled, because I do have a pretty discerning palate where I taste more flavors than the regular person. Not fun when you're pregnant, let me just tell you that. But I think it is one of those things where I notice it different, and maybe I get a hint of something else that he doesn't. Or maybe when I was mixing my tea, my part got a little bit more Assam and his part got a little more Ceylon. And that's why they taste a little bit different, and you can even do it. And if you're using different teapots, we've talked about teapots, so like if you do different teapot where you get more layers of flavor in there, again, these are all things that make it fun to try. And really, like, that's the thing, just get out there, hang out there, try and do some different things. So Cindy says she wants to try adding cacao to the evening mint. She may try and do that this evening. Yeah, that's it. An herbal tea. You're going to add cacao, which does have a little bit. Cacao has a little bit of caffeine in it, so be aware of that if you're sensitive to caffeine. But that's why you want to go ahead and you want to try it. It was funny because I used to drink teas. I mean, it's not funny that I used to drink teas. I used to drink tea, and then for a while I was eating that red berry cereal every morning. And then I happened to have a Japanese cherry blossom tea, green tea. And then I had the cereal and I had the tea, and then I took the bite of the cereal and I was like, whoa, flavor had completely changed in my mouth and it was so much more complex. And that's when I really started to think about how does food and tea pair where you can really bring out some unique flavors, enhance flavors. It's one of the things that made it so much fun to kind of go out there and experience. So I really encourage you to go ahead and do some cheese and chocolate pairings. And if you want to do some, feel free to invite me. I like both tea and chocolate, so we're good. We're good. I do want to say that one of the things that I love about that, and maybe having some friends over when you do it or as a date night or whatever, is that tea teaches us to slow down, pay attention. Chocolate typically will do the same thing. In our world, we typically are rushing around, but both the tea and the chocolate are going to invite us to kind of pause long enough to notice something. And when you're sitting there and you're just trying to concentrate on flavors and how does this change, you've really blocked out the rest of the world for a minute. You've kind of stepped into the moment and are enjoying that moment. And that's what I wanted to do today. I wanted to kind of talk about what some of the pairings were. I wanted to be able to encourage you to try some of the pairings on your own and create some of your own ones, because you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to follow complicated rules. There were 3 rules. They were really easy, 3 rules. But I want you to go and discover for yourself how much fun it really, really good. So while I look through my notes to see if there was anything else I wanted to chat about today, go ahead and put in the chat or the comments. And okay, somebody is definitely going to be trying a party with their friends, a tea and chocolate pairing party with their friends. Yay, that makes me so excited. Okay. One of the things that I love is that you can do that. So put in there, which kind of chocolate tea pairing do you think you will enjoy the most? The dark chocolate, the milk chocolate, the white chocolate, the chili spicy chocolate. Let me know in the chat or the comments. Next week, we are going to be having our live. We are going to be doing our monthly question and answer. So here's your chance to be reminded to say, hey, I have been thinking about this, or I ran into this. I have had some interesting questions while I've been here in Georgia about tea. And it was funny because at the hotel this morning, I ran into a person and I was going through and they didn't label their hot water. They had 4 of the canisters out, the carafes out, and one was marked decaf. And I got really sad for a minute because I was like, I don't know where the hot water is. And I looked around and there was nothing else out. And so I literally took a cup and I like poured a little and I was like, oh, it's coffee. And I do it second one. Oh, it's coffee. But when I got to the third one, because I didn't bother with the decaf, I did find hot water. I'm like, yay, I can have my tea. She goes, oh, I drink tea too. I was, oh no. I said, I don't drink. Oh, yay, I'm excited. I don't drink coffee. And she's like, oh, this is my only cup. I only take a small little bit every day. I was like, well, I'm a tea drinker. And she's like, I love tea. And then we started having this whole conversation. And that's the thing. Connect with people. We kind of chatted for a minute. She had a couple of questions. So I will definitely be answering those next week. Stephanie's a definite dark, and I have a milk chocolate person. And then I do know a friend of mine. I know a lot of people don't consider white chocolate chocolate because it's just the cacao butter, but I do have a friend that's allergic to traditional chocolate, and so white chocolate's the only kind of chocolate she can have. So I cut her some slack for that. But yeah, that's always fun. That's always fun to look at. But we're going to be doing question and answer next week. I will be back to having tea and brewing tea with you as we get back to my kitchen. I hope. Really want to hang out at my house for a little while. All right. Any chocolate. So my handy dandy assistant says he will eat any chocolate. That sounds about right. He's pretty much eat almost anything. There's only 2 or 3 foods that we've ever discovered in the world that he will not eat. So yeah, he'll eat all the chocolate. He will. It's all good. All right. Well, I just wanted to go over that. I hope you're as excited as I am to see what some of your tea and chocolate pairings become, and if you try any of the ones that I've suggested today. But that being said, I have a very early morning flight tomorrow, which I'm super excited about. So I'm going to say good night, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Thanks for coming, everybody.